Hi guys, and welcome back to another IBRACORP video. And thank you for your patience while we got set up in our new temporary accommodation waiting for our new house to be ready. As promised at the end of our last episode, in the Unraid Zero to Hero series, today we're going to be looking at Nginx Proxy Manager and as a whole, how we address accessing things remotely or reverse proxying something out to the web. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of different methods. There's many ways to skin a cat, so there's not always a single way to do things, and we may not cover everything out there. But I know for a fact that the way we've got things set up has lasted us many years with zero interaction or needing to troubleshoot, which to me tells me it's a pretty good approach. So we're not going to waste any time, let's just get stuck into today's video. Alright guys, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're here on our Unraid server, the YouTube server that we've been using for all of our videos so far as part of the Zero to Hero series. Now if you don't know, every single episode we cover from the very start in this playlist of a brand new server to where we're at now and where we plan to be. So if you're not sure where to start, go back to the start of the playlist. I'll link it down in the description so that you can at least follow along where we're up to. Something our YouTube members have asked for in the past to be able to follow along a lot easier is having this kind of setup. So we've done that for you now. Now we can kick on. Now in the last episode, we installed a couple of different Docker applications here, Docker containers. We've got Nginx Proxy Manager, Plex, Radarr, Sonarr, and Overseerr to give us a starting stack. We already went through installing them and setting them up and what their templates look like, which I'll just show you here briefly. So now we'll actually be able to go into them and start working with them, starting with Nginx Proxy Manager for today. Now, in our previous episode, I showed you a template that was technically outdated, and because Nginx Proxy Manager has a brand new slick interface that would be perfect for today's video, we're going to install the new one. So what I've done is left click and I've uninstalled or removed the current Nginx Proxy Manager install. The next thing we'll go to is over to our settings, go to clean up appdata. And this is one of the plugins I recommended you guys get as part of our core plugins that we like to use. And this is one of the reasons, right? So I've removed the container, but the folder still exists. And if we go to install something that's going to have the same name, that could be a problem if there's things like databases already existing in there. So what we'll do is go in here, and I'll actually remove this one as well. I don't need that. Be very careful when using this that you are removing something you don't actually need. Then go ahead and click delete. Those two folders are completely gone now, leaving it nice and empty for us to install again. So let's go to the App Store and we'll type in Nginx Proxy Manager and we'll quickly review the template. So the new proper location for the template is this JC21, which you can see just there. If you're seeing that, then we're on the right one. Go ahead and click on install. Now, something that I like to do is actually rename my containers to something easy, right? Because we want to be able to refer to the container names later when we connect things up. That's the whole reason we created our custom Docker network in a previous episode. So why not make it something easy so we don't have to type out a full name, for example, every time we want to refer to a container. So what I do is use lowercase and I just pick a nice acronym or similar to help me narrow down the size. We can see our container template repository is fine. The custom network type, we want that on our custom Docker network we created in the previous episodes. Scroll down, and we have options to use things like Tailscale built into the template. We're not going to be doing Tailscale right now. We will be doing it in the next few episodes. All right, so we just want to break this up so that we know the difference between using something like Tailscale and not using it. So for now, let's just leave it off. We come down, we can see our default ports. Our web UI is going to be on 81, our HTTP port is 80, and HTTPS is 443. These are the ports that are on the outside of the container. Inside, there'll be these ones, right? They won't change, but the outside ones will. Now, I personally don't like having the outside ports to be 80 and 443. What I tend to do is something like 1A80 and 1443. That's how I like to do it. Then we get to our data location, so the folder. Now, personally, I don't like having naming conventions like this, so I will change it. You don't need to. If you just want to keep it easy, you can just keep it as the default. I like to keep things nice and clean, right? So what I might do is actually just switch that to NPM and match our container name. But be sure to update anywhere else that that's going to be referring to. So in here, we'll want to update that to npm as well. And same goes for this one. Click show more settings, make sure nothing else is hiding back there. It doesn't look like it. And that looks all good. So let's go hit apply. Okay, with that installed, let's go back to our Docker tab here. We'll left click npm and go to the web UI. And here's our brand new slick interface that we're now greeted with by Nginx Proxy Manager. And I got to say, the developers have done a great job now. It looks so nice. The beautiful part is that we can switch between light and dark mode. Now, I'm not going to do it so I don't flashbang you guys, but in the top right, we can actually switch between the two now. So let's go ahead and start filling this out. I'll put my name in. We can go admin@IBRACORP.io, put in our password, and here we are on our interface. Now you can see how much cleaner it looks now in this latest update. I am a massive fan of this, so I really like this. But let's sit and discuss what we're actually doing here. So we need to think of it in the sense of our containers or applications or whatever it is we're running at home, and we want to be able to access them remotely. That's our problem statement. Now, a reverse proxy will allow us to access those resources remotely. Nginx is only one type of reverse proxy, and Nginx Proxy Manager is one type of an Nginx reverse proxy. Some of the reasons I like it is the nice, easy to use interface that you're looking at here. It's also a nice central repository. It will automatically generate SSL certificates if we choose to use that option. It also allows us to upload custom certificates if we want to use that option too. Now, a couple of these features, they're not necessarily not done by other reverse proxies, and some people prefer different types of reverse proxies. There's things like Swag, Traffic, a whole bunch of others that we all have made videos on in the past on our channel. So if you wanted to check those out, just punch in reverse proxy on the channel and you'll find all of those. But still, to this day, Nginx Proxy Manager is one of my favorites. So what it's going to help us do is reach our resources remotely. Now, right now we have our reverse proxy set up, and what we want to do is start setting up how to access those resources. So why don't we just quickly go back to Unraid for a minute, and we'll start up an application. I'm going to do Overseerr. I'm going to start that up. We'll left click and go to the web UI and just make sure that it's on. Now, keep in mind, I would not be doing a reverse proxy on an application that you have not yet configured locally, okay? Because what you're essentially doing is going to be accessing it from the web. So if anybody was to intercept that before you had a chance to set it up, you could essentially be one, locked out of your own app, or two, breached as part of a cyber attack. So I would not be doing that. If anything, I would be waiting to go through our Overseerr video, which will be coming up soon, or one of our past Overseerr ones, to set this up first. But just for the purpose of today's video, let's say this has been set up. So when we are done with what we're doing, we should find this screen on a web URL. Let's go back to Nginx Proxy Manager. If you go to the top and select proxy hosts, you can also do it just from here as well. You'll get this page, proxy hosts, right? Lots of helpful information here, but I'm going to help you navigate through it. First thing we're going to do is add a proxy host. So let's click on that. Now in here, we can type in a domain. For the purpose of today's video, I'm going to find a domain that I can use in order for us to access this resource. So let's go ahead and maybe we'll head over to Cloudflare. Now, obviously we assume that you have purchased a domain somewhere. Domains are pretty cheap, and I think they're an easy way to get things going. These days, there are ways to not have to use a domain. You can use things like static IPs and avoid using a domain entirely, but I wouldn't recommend them. For the cost of a domain, you can honestly get a lot done. So for today's video, I have a domain that I can use for us to test with, and that's this one here, unraid.io. My domain currently lives with Cloudflare. If you use a different domain registrar or provider or DNS provider, then you would be going to that provider instead. So what we do is go under DNS and go to records. You can see here I have a bunch of old DNS records. I use these for our pangolin video. So what I'm going to do is actually select them all, and I'm just going to delete them. So we can start completely fresh as we have promised you. So now we're completely fresh. We've got no DNS records whatsoever. Let's make a start. What we're going to do is click add record. The first thing I like to do is create a CNAME, type in www, put an @ symbol here, or type in your actual root domain, Unraid.io in our case, and hit save. That's just a little easy one that will help you with things like SEO or search engine optimization, things like that. Having the www instantly redirect to the root domain, it's just a good habit to get into, in my opinion. The next thing we need to do is type in our root domain. So that's going to be an A record for most cases, because we want to use an IP address to reach us. So for the name, I'll just put an @ symbol in there that again fills in the root domain for us. And then we need to put in our IP address. Now this is where having this method might be difficult for everybody. That is the reason why we will cover Cloudflare Tunnels in the next video to allow us to access things without needing to type in our IP address. In the interest of keeping the video clean for one topic at a time, we're going to use the IP address method. There are some inherent risks that you need to be aware of, but using an IP address is typically safe if you can hide it as much as you can. In our case with Cloudflare, they proxy that, right? So that we don't see the root IP when somebody snoops on the domain. I still don't trust that enough, and so I go to things like Cloudflare Tunnels or just rely on Tailscale. One important thing that I will mention now, and I have mentioned before, is if you do not need to access this on the wide web, it's just something you need to access remotely, that's a different thing we can address with Tailscale. We've done plenty of videos of Tailscale, even one recently. You can go back and check that out, and we will cover it as part of this series as well. If you don't need to actually access it via a browser, don't use this method, guys. Just use a VPN or Tailscale or WireGuard or any other similar type of tool that allows you to just access something remotely without exposing it to the web. But let's say we are exposing this to the web, and Overseerr is a really good example because you might have family and friends that you want to be able to access Overseerr remotely. So you give them a domain name and say, go to request.unraid.io and, put your request through. That's a lot easier than trying to get somebody set up on a VPN and installing application. And we all have people in our family and friends circles that will really struggle with that setup. So different solutions for different purposes. Just wanted to make that clear. So anyway, we're going to use our IP address. Now I'm going to put my IP address in here and then I'm going to hide it, right? So what I'm going to do is just leave that to last. You will do that on your end. So go to what's my IP, find your IP, put it in here. The other problem that you might come across is if you have a dynamic IP, which is more common these days, then unless you update this manually all the time, domain could possibly stop working. We can use something like dynamic DNS, which can also address this problem. Not going to bother with it right this second, but you find your IP address, public IP address, and put it in here. Now the next record we'll put in is a CNAME. The name of that record will be request, and we can just put the root again, okay? And we'll click save. This is where we're gonna tell the DNS server where to find our Overseerr instance. So request.unraid.io is there. Now off screen, I'll go ahead and put our public IP address in here too. Okay, so we've set up our DNS side of things. It's pointing to our public IP address. What do we need to do next? Well, the next thing we need to do is start opening up some ports. That's going to allow the traffic over ports 80 and 443 to come in and talk to Nginx Proxy Manager. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Once again, it's a good reason why we use things like tunnels or Tailscale or VPNs to avoid having to open up ports. We want to try and avoid opening ports as much as we can. It really leaves us vulnerable and allows other things to snoop through those ports when they're open. But again, for today's video, we're just covering this methodology, so let's just follow it through and through. What you need to do is find the IP address of your router. Typically it's .1 on whatever subnet you're on. In my case here, it's 192.168.1.1. Now I'm not at my usual home, so I don't have my Unify setup. We're using a Netgear router here. And in Netgear, if I go to advanced and I go to setup, then I go to LAN setup, advanced setup, and then I go to port forwarding, port triggering. We can see we've got some ports set up here, right? So I've got one here for Plex, for example. What I'm going to do is add another one. I'm sorry about the white. I can't really do anything about that. It's a much older interface on this Nighthawk. We'll go to add a custom service here. Now yours might look a little different depending on how you're doing this, but just bear with me. With the service name, we're going to call this HTTP. The TCP protocol and the external port is 80. The internal port is going to be what we set on our Docker container. So let's go back to that. And if I just expand here, we can see that 80 inside the container is 1880 outside of it. Okay, so what we want to do is put that number in. So let's go back to the router, and I'm going to untick this box here that says use the same as the external port because I want to customize that. Say 1880. Then we'll type in the address of the server. Obviously in my case it's 200, so it's that one, and then we click apply. We've just forwarded port 80 to our server. Let's do it again. add another custom service. And this time we're going to add HTTPS. This is for our HTTPS traffic, obviously. The external port is 443. We'll untick that box. And if I just go back to double check, 443 is 1443. Okay, 1443. So we'll put a 1 just in front of that, and we'll select the IP or type it in again and click apply. Great, so now we have ports 80 and 443 going straight over to our server. It's actually easier to see like that, isn't it? Yeah, that's better. So now you can see 80 goes to 1880 over to our IP address, and 443 to 1443. Now that should be the logistical stuff done, assuming that your IP address never changes on the DNS side, right? Let's assume that's not happening, everything's fine, we can continue on. So we come back to Nginx Proxy Manager. So now I can type in request.ibracorp.io, click on request, right? The scheme, when you read this, it's referring to the current internal scheme. Some applications will only start in HTTPS, right? Even when they're internal. So that's when you would switch this to HTTPS. Most applications that I come across typically start in HTTP over port 80. So we don't need to change that. But what we do then is type in the IP address. So in our case, it's 192.168.1.200, and then the forwarding port. We want to know what those ports are, right? Now, this is referring to the actual application we're putting in. Let's open up Overseerr in the left-hand side, or we can just view it here as well. The port is 5055. 5055. We come back here and we type in 5055. That is the details for Overseerr. Caching assets is good. Blocking common exploits can sometimes cause problems depending on the application. You can always try it on, and then WebSocket support is typically useful for a lot of applications that have WebSockets and need them. If you're not sure, you can always leave that off and then try it. And if you have any problems, come back and turn it on, unless you know explicitly that the application needs them. In our case, we'll just leave it. Now, why don't we just go ahead and click save here just to save our work. And you can see currently there's no SSL certificate applied. It's HTTP only. If I try to open that link, it's not going to work. So what we're going to do is go to SSL and we'll say request a new certificate. Don't bother changing any of these unless you know what you're doing for the minute. But what we can do is use a DNS challenge. Now, why would you use a DNS challenge? The DNS challenge will allow Nginx Proxy Manager, or in this case for the certificate side for authentication, to prove that you own the domain, right? It will pump out this section here, which allows you to input your API token, which means it doesn't have to check it over ports 80 and 443. We're not going to do that today. We'll just leave it as is and we'll click on save. Now, it does help to pay attention, and you guys probably picked up on this. I actually had request.ibracorp.io. That's not true. It's actually request.unraid.io. Click on create. Let's go back to SSL and let's try that again. And there you go, we did it. So what we've created is a letsencrypt certificate. Doesn't cost us anything, and it automatically should renew every 3 months, I believe. But let's try opening up the link now. And what do you know? We're now able to access it remotely. How cool is that? So right now I'm on request.unraid.io and it's taking me over to my Overseerr instance. Now for security, what I'm going to quickly do is just actually turn that off. We can come back here and we can just say disable, right? And it'll stop forwarding that on. Now Nginx Proxy Manager has a whole bunch of other cool features too. So if we go over to certificates here, you see all the certificates we generate. You can create additional users. We can create access lists. So we can say, you know, for this particular user, send authentication upstream. We can set up particular rules. Under hosts, we have redirection hosts. So if you've got things like, if you've got a site that's moved, we can move that over so that we can redirect them with the application too. Obviously, audit logs are useful to look at. And then if you go into settings, you get a whole bunch of stuff here as well. So if somebody hits your Nginx proxy server, but then that doesn't know where to send traffic onwards, you'll usually see a page like this, a congratulations page. That's where you know you've probably got nothing going onward from your reverse proxy. Now, what if we use Cloudflare, and I'm going to throw this one as a little bonus for you guys. What if we use Cloudflare and we don't want to use letsencrypt certificates? This is a method I really like to do. As much as I love letsencrypt, I don't like the fact that it has to constantly revalidate. Is it more secure? Yeah, probably. I agree it would be, but I like to do things a little bit differently. So while I am going to show you the Cloudflare approach here, if you're not using Cloudflare and you can do something similar by using custom certificates, this is going to be helpful. So what we'll do is go over to Cloudflare. Under SSL and TLS, drop that down and go to Origin Server. You can see here I have a couple of Origin Server certificates already, but in order for us to generate a new key, we need to create this from scratch. So what we'll do is click on Create Certificate. I leave all of that as default. You can pick the time, you can pick the domains or host names and the time of validity on the certificates. So I've currently got it set to 15 years. You can do it as little as 7 days and anywhere in between. I leave it on 15 years and click on Create. Now it's going to give you this page and it's only going to give you the key once. So make sure you copy it before you go and close this window. What I like to do is click on copy. Then I open up Visual Studio. You can do this in even just a notepad. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I open up the file, I paste it in here. I'll create a new file as well. Go back and copy the key as well, okay? It goes without saying, guys, that if you mishandle this and you leave it sitting on your computer, you're opening yourself up to a lot of risk. So only do this once. If you can't store it somewhere completely secure, delete it once you're done with this process at the end of this video. So what you see here is we have a key and we have the certificate. I've created a folder and in here I'm going to put in, I'll call it unraid.io.pem. Very important, put that title in there, okay? And click on save. Then we have our key, so we'll do the same thing, Control S, and we'll say unraid.io.key and save. Then we have a PEM file and a key file. Let's go back to Nginx Proxy Manager. And underneath certificates here, we can go to add certificate. And we're not going to use Let's Encrypt. We're going to click on custom certificate instead. And let's name it. And let's browse for those two files. Now, don't get caught by a common mistake we make by picking the wrong file for the wrong option. The first file that gets asked for is the key. So let's click on browse and find the key file. Click open and then go to the certificate and browse for that. So we should have our key and our PEM file there. Click on save. Right, so now we have a custom certificate. What does that mean? Well, let's go back to our hosts. Let's edit that host that we already have for that domain and go to SSL. Now, rather than picking this, we can actually pick this one and click on save. Now we have a custom certificate. Let's enable it and see if that works. Enabled it, let's open it up. And sure enough, it works. Why would we consider doing this? Well, if we go back to Cloudflare now, let's click on OK to close this. You see here, here's our certificate, right? Now what I might do for security's sake is revoke these other two. Okay, so we have our only one origin certificate. Let's go to security. Sorry, let's go to SSL overview. And what we want to make sure of is that the browser to Cloudflare to the origin server, if we click on configure, it's currently set to automatic. This is a newer feature of Cloudflare where it will detect what kind of certificate you're running on the origin and pick the most appropriate setting. Previously, you used to have to actually set this manually, right? So what it's done is it's scanned it and realized that we actually have a Cloudflare certificate on our origin and set it to full strict, which means that it cannot be, if somebody was to try and jump in between here and intercept halfway, it would fail because Cloudflare is trying to look for that origin certificate only to accept connections. Now, I don't want to rely on the automatic, so I might go custom and just leave it on full strict, selected manually and click save. And there you go. So now we've established a certificate that doesn't expire for 15 years and it also encrypts end-to-end from the origin all the way to the person's browser. Pretty cool, hey? And then what I might do just to clean up after ourselves is come in here and actually delete this Let's Encrypt one, close that off, and we have a working proxy host now. Alright guys, so that is Nginx Proxy Manager end-to-end we've set up an application, we've set up the DNS, then we've set up the certificate, and we've had it all connect so that we can access something remotely. I thought I'd just bring up the GitHub here so everybody can see it. Nginx Proxy Manager / Nginx Proxy Manager. And JC21, love your work. Give him a star and keep up the great work. Buy him a coffee. All the links are there on his page. In the next episode is start locking it down a little bit. So we're going to look at the next option, which is getting things set up with our VPN or the Cloudflare tunnel. That will eliminate ports being open. That will eliminate the problems we have with dynamic IP addresses, and it will just give us a future-proof setup that you will not need to touch for years. I guarantee it. For now, use it how I've shown you if you like. Just be mindful of those security risks that I mentioned. If you're not comfortable with that, you can always take it down for the now and just work locally. That's the safest thing you can do, is just not open up anything at all. Otherwise, I hope it's helped you guys out. Please leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel and helps the video go further. And I obviously would really appreciate your support. If you're stuck and need some help, jump in our Discord. We've got plenty of people who might be able to help you out, or at least have a chat about anything on your mind. Thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.